So we're going to close out this part of our discussion of classical conditioning with talking about several other classical conditioning phenomenon or principles. And these are stimulus generalization and stimulus discrimination. These are really, really simple to understand. If you know what it means to generalize or to discriminate, then you're going to understand what these concepts mean. Stimulus generalization involves giving a condition response, like fear, for example, to stimuli that are similar to the conditioned stimulus but not the same. So going back to our doctor who gives injections, right? Doctor giving vaccines. If a child were to fear the doctor but then generalize that fear to anyone in a white lab coat, maybe they go on a class trip to the Franklin Institute, somebody is wearing a white lab coat, one of the people that do the demonstrations. The kid sees the person in the white lab coat. They're now associating that person with the doctor. They're generalizing their fear. Their heart starts racing. They get really anxious. That's stimulus generalization. If I'm bitten by a dog when I'm young, and I now generalize my fear to all dogs and not just the dog that bit me, that's an example of stimulus generalization. Stimulus discrimination involves responding to one stimulus, but not to stimuli that are similar. So let me go back to the dog example. Let's say I'm bitten by a dog, really scared of that one dog, but after multiple encounters with other dogs, I learned to discriminate, only fear the dog that bit me and not all dogs. Same goes for our other example with the doctor, right? I learned to fear only going to the doctor's office and seeing that particular doctor and not everyone who's in a white lab coat. I learned to discriminate. Next up is something called the blocking effect. This is when previous trials of a conditioned stimulus, unconditioned stimulus pairing can serve to block the effectiveness when we try to add on a second conditioned stimulus. So let's say in phase 1, a tone is presented before a shock. So now the rat believes that when they hear the tone, a shock is coming, and that's going to elicit some kind of startle response, maybe every time they hear the sound of the tone. But in phase 2, we're adding a conditioned stimulus, in this case a light, with the tone, again, pairing it with a shock, trying to elicit that same startle response after the rat is exposed to the light and the tone. In the test phase, researchers might expose the rat to the light, but find that there's a weaker conditioning to the light than there is to the tone. So in other words, the rat isn't exhibiting the same startle response or as strong a startle response to the light as they did the tone. And all that means is that this initial pairing, this initial acquisition of an association between the tone and the shock is blocking the effectiveness of this light that's being introduced. And finally, higher order conditioning. If you have a pet at home, you can actually try this type of higher order conditioning with them. It's really interesting, and then you can report back to us on how it went. So higher order conditioning is a procedure where the conditioned stimulus in one conditioning experience is paired with a new neutral stimulus, creating a second conditioned stimulus, which is a lot to take in, but let's walk through it together, okay? So let's say I have a cat at home, and they hear a can opener when I'm opening their food, and they learn to associate the electric can opener with the food so that they're going to start to salivate just at the sound of the can opener because they're predicting that the food is going to be presented to them next. Let's say that can opener is stored in a cabinet where the door is very squeaky. This is our second order stimulus, the squeaky cabinet door. Now, they're exhibiting salivation not just to the response of the not just to the sound of the can opener, but the squeaky cabinet door, because again, they can predict the sound of the squeaky cabinet door means the can opener is coming out, means that the food is going to be present. All right. So this is our second order stimulus. And what we'll find is that they can exhibit a conditioned response, though it might be a weaker conditioned response to that second order stimulus. So try it at home. See if you can higher order condition your pets and report back to us.